Coming up on the 2014 FIFA World Cup magazine, we're back in Brazil's northeast, this time in Salvador. We meet a footballing legend who's now calling the city home. And we take in the local derby between Vitória and Bahia.
Welcome to Salvador.
Salvador is the land of happiness.
It's joy, carnival, and fun.
Salvador is motivation, passion and pride.
Beauty, joy and hospitality.
Salvador, our Bahia is wonderful, very nice, and happy.
With a population of over 3 million, Salvador is Brazil's third largest city. Not only is it the capital of the northeastern state of Bahia, it's also one of the oldest cities in the whole of South America, with a history that stretches back as far as the 1500s. Salvador was the second most important city in the Portuguese Empire, and as a colonial powerhouse, became a destination for a large number of African slaves. And there's perhaps no other place on earth where African descendants have preserved their heritage as well as in Salvador. All these elements combine to create an extremely picturesque city.
I'm Sergio Pedreira. I'm a photographer here in Salvador and I'm going to show you around the city. Here's the Porto da Barra beach, one of the most famous beaches in Salvador.
It was here that the Portuguese arrived in 1549 to found Brazil's first capital. And this popular beach is just one stretch of sand on Salvador's 80 kilometers of coastline.
This is the Pelourinho, the oldest part of Brazil and a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Any visit to Salvador isn't complete without a walk in the Pelourinho. Packed with colourful colonial buildings, museums and shops, it's the heartbeat of the city. And with a church around every corner, it's no surprise Salvador is also known as Black Rome.
San Francisco's church is one of the biggest Baroque churches in all Latin America.
The São Francisco Church is also one of Brazil's most magnificent. Completed in 1723, it's crammed with displays of wealth and splendour everywhere you turn.
This is the municipal square, once home of the Portuguese government. Here you'll find the Lacerda lift, which links the upper and lower cities.
One of Salvador's most iconic landmarks, the Lacerda lift first opened in 1868 and was updated 70 years later. It now takes about 20 seconds to travel the 72 meters between the upper and lower cities.
Here's the lower city with wonderful views of the lift. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. If you're coming to Salvador for the 2014 World Cup, bring your camera.
With such an impressive history, it's no surprise that Salvador is home to two of Brazil's most established football teams, and in Esporte Clube Vitória, one of the oldest. Founded in 1899 in the suburb of Vitória, the club originally played cricket before quickly introducing the beautiful game. Whilst its youth system has developed the likes of Porto striker Hulk and Chelsea's David Luiz, Vitória has never lifted the Campeonato Brasileiro, its best finish being runners-up in 1993. And they currently ply their trade in Brazil's Série B. But with 10 out of the last 14 state championships to their name, they're very much Bahia's team to beat.
Vitória is a great team, a team with a good tradition here in Brazil. So I'm happy to be here as part of a very talented group. The club's produced some great players over the years, and since arriving here, I hope to help develop the next generation at Vitória.
But despite their recent state dominance, it's their great rivals who are the city's most successful team. Esport Club Bahia not only have 43 state titles to their name compared to Vitoria's 26, they've also won 2 national championships, back in 1959 and 1988. And Bahia are back in Brazil's Série A, having found themselves in Série C as recently as 2006. Both teams have been struggling recently on the national stage, but Bahia and Vitória are still hugely popular through the state.
People from Bahia are passionate about football. Traditionally, the fans from Bahia and Vitória, especially Bahia, have record attendance numbers in their stadiums. So these two teams raise the profile of football in our state. They are the biggest clubs and have the most fans. So their rivalry serves as an incentive for the fans to go to the stadium.
Even when the club was in the second and third divisions, the supporters always came to watch us. Their presence is guaranteed. They always fill the stadium, so I'm very proud to be wearing the Bahia shirt, knowing that the supporters are hugely passionate for the team and are the type who always get behind the players, whatever happens.
And as you might imagine, the fans come out in force when the two sides meet each other. The second Clásico of the year was hosted at Vitória's Estádio Manuel Barradas, locally known as the Barradão. With the teams perennially vying for state supremacy, this is the fixture of the state season.
It really is a match apart. There's always a great crowd, and both teams prepare for the occasion with even more intensity. It's almost like a cup final for the championship, as whoever wins the Clásicos normally becomes the champion.
Hopefully, it'll be a calm match. May the best team win. Of course, I hope that's Vitória. But most of all, I hope both sets of supporters are happy.
Adding an extra dimension to proceedings is the relationship between the two coaches. Bahia's man in charge is Paulo Roberto Falcao, a Brazil international for 10 years, whilst his opposite number was his midfield partner at both the 1982 FIFA World Cup and Italian outfit Roma, Toninho Cerezo.
Because of our friendship, and with me being the coach at Vitória and him being the coach at Bahia, it's added another element to the contest for the fans. If that generates more interest in the game and is something good for the Clásico between the two teams, then I'm happy with it. We don't get together every month. Sometimes we spend months without seeing each other, but we talk on the phone a lot. I really like him. He's like my white brother.
And Cerezo had a message for his old friend.
Paulo, this Sunday, we're going to smash you.
With the game only a few minutes old, it looked like Vitória would do exactly that. Already 1-0 up, Gabriel doubled the lead in the 7th minute with a carbon copy header. Vitória were in dreamland. But in a pulsating first half, Bahia was soon thrown a lifeline. Bahia's top scorer, Sousa, made no mistake from the spot. And just a minute later, the Tricolor were back on level terms. 2-2 after just 22 minutes. The game looked to be heading to half-time all square, but there was one last chance for Vitória. With the last kick of the half, Giovanni showed just why he's had such a successful career in Europe. The second half saw chances for both teams, but nothing that could beat either goalkeeper. The final whistle brought to an end another thrilling Salvador classic, and for the time being kept the state title wide open. So 3 points went to Vitoria, whilst the bragging rights went to Cerezo. Part martial art, part dance, Capoeira is a reflection of Salvador, something truly Brazilian, but whose soul is very much from Africa. Its origins date back some 400 years, when Afro-Brazilian slaves developed it as a form of self-defense. When it was banned by their owners, slaves disguised it within an acrobatic dance. It was still prohibited in 1920, but 10 years later, the first academy was established in Salvador, which is now considered Capoeira's home.
It developed here in Salvador through these academies, where Capoeira was primarily taught as a defensive martial art. It developed into this great spectacle, and that's why people became interested in it, copying it and taking it to Europe and all over the world. Capoeira is now part of our national heritage. It's combat, it's an art, and it encompasses a whole range of fighting styles.
Music is an integral part of any Capoeira display, and the berimbau is the most iconic instrument. Originally used to alert a fighter to approaching danger, today the rhythms determine the style of the fight.
This is the sort of rhythm where the capoeirista will spend more time with his hands on the ground. It's the first type of capoeira, but there are hundreds of rhythms. Every master has his own rhythm. There are rhythms for contact fighting, rhythms for acrobatics, and there are rhythms for a more streetwise capoeira. And in the past, there were rhythms devised to tell you when the police were arriving, the cavalry beat, like this.
Capoeira is very important in Brazil. It's part of our cultural identity, and foreign people value it a lot more now. I think Brazilians need to be more aware of the value of capoeira too. There is still some prejudice towards it because it used to be considered a crime. But on the whole, people have more knowledge of it and are definitely valuing it a lot more.
A new resident in Salvador is Paulo Roberto Falcao. The former midfielder, who starred for the Seleção between 1976 and 1986, took over the reins of Bahia in January, his second coaching role following a 16-year hiatus. His first job was in fact 22 years ago, when he accepted arguably the hardest position in Brazilian football, head coach of the national team.
I didn't have any plans to be a coach. In fact, I had it in my head that I would never accept a coaching role. The one exception was always going to be for the Brazilian national team, because of the country and so on. I couldn't say no to the Seleção. But after that, I carried on for a while. I worked with the Japanese national team, at Internacional in Porto Alegre, and with America in Mexico. Then I stopped for a while and decided to go into television, where I worked for 16 years at Globo. I'd already worked on TV in Italy, and had also worked for a TV network from the south. And then, before the World Cup in South Africa, I decided to return to coaching. I came back because I think the things I've done in my career, both in the media and as a player, I think I've always done them well. The only thing that's still missing especially because I have the conviction that I can do it, is to achieve something as a coach. That's what's missing. I think it's something I've not completed in my life. So I thought that now was the right moment to try again.
And Falcao has had an immediate impact. Despite the derby loss to Vitória, the 58-year-old guided Bahia to their first state title in 11 years this season. He's also overseeing one of the country's most impressive youth systems. The club's under-15s reached the last four of the prestigious Manchester United Premier Cup last year. But there is one moment from his own playing career that's never too far from his thoughts. Brazil's fateful game against Italy in the 1982 FIFA World Cup. Brazil faced the Italians in the last game of the second group stage, needing just a draw to reach the semi-finals. What followed in Barcelona was one of the most enthralling fixtures in FIFA World Cup history.
It was bad, but it was a very beautiful game. And people are sometimes mistaken when they say that Italy was a defensive team. They were defensive, but they had wonderful players, and it was a very balanced game. We constantly tried to take the initiative. I was playing in Italy at the time. In reality, from the Italian team, my only friend that I played against was Bruno Conti. The others were my rivals because they played for Juventus, Fiorentina, Internazionale or Milan. So there wasn't that much of a strange feeling for me. My only difficulty was to play against Bruno, one of my greatest friends at Roma. Well, it went like this. 0-0 would have been good enough. A draw would have taken us through. But then Italy scored to make it 1-0.
But the Seleção was soon back on level terms. Captain Socrates scoring for the Brazilians just 7 minutes later. But a misplaced pass from Toninho Cerezo, of all people, led Paulo Rossi in for his second of the game. Then came Falcao's moment, and that celebration.
We needed at least a draw, so that goal, my goal, which drew us level once again, was, in my mind, enough for us to qualify. We'd been behind twice, but had come back, so in that instant, I felt like it had sealed our qualification. I think that's the reason why I showed so much emotion. It was the crucial goal, the goal that would take us to the semi-finals from an extremely difficult game. 2-2. Now we will qualify for the semi-finals.
But it wasn't to be. Paulo Rossi's third goal of the game, 16 minutes from time, saw Italy progress. Brazil, whose lineup also featured Zico alongside Socrates, Falcao and Cerezo, became perhaps the greatest international side not to win the FIFA World Cup.
We had prepared to be champions. We worked for that. We trained for it and fought for it. And it's obvious that the world expected Brazil to be champions. The truth is that sometimes we meet up and talk about 1982, and we still feel that there is something missing. It no longer plays on our minds, but people ask us a lot about that World Cup. Everyone wants to know how we felt. And of course, in those situations, the memories from that game all come flooding back. But today, the feelings are no longer bitter. It's actually a good memory, a good feeling about what a generation managed to achieve.
The African influence is clear to see throughout Salvador, and it's particularly evident in the local cuisine.
I'm going to make the typical Baianan acarajé, brought here from Africa. It's a big part of our tradition, the Baianan tradition. It's made with black-eyed beans and with white beans and is then fried. Then we add peppers mixed with ginger and onions. Then vatapá, which is made with bread, ginger, peanuts, cashew nuts, coconut, onion and coriander. Then caruru, which is made from okra. Tomato salad with some dressing. And lots of the popular seafood, prawns. And our acarajé is ready.
Two years ago, Bahia's stadium, the Estadio Fonte was demolished. It had been built in 1951, but structural problems meant it hadn't been in use for 3 years. Today, it's being transformed into one of the 12 venues for the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Now called the Arena Fonte, it'll play host to 6 matches, 4 group games, a round of 16 clash, and a quarter-final.
The total capacity will be 50,000 fans. The stadium is being designed so that these spectators will be spread across 3 tiers in each stand. The architectural design is actually in the shape of a horseshoe, so it will enable us to add more seats. Up to an additional 8,000 could be added in a future expansion of the South Stand.
The distinctive horseshoe shape has been kept from the original stadium design, but the public-private joint venture would also have some notable additions. Shops, hotels, a restaurant, football museum and concert hall are all part of this multi-purpose complex, a vision of the future combined with a nod to the past.
The idea of rebuilding the new arena in the historical centre of Salvador will create a regeneration of the entire historical centre, which will be of benefit not just to our capital, but to the whole state. It's much like what is happening in England's capital, London, where an old and degraded part of the city is being used as the location of the stadium for the London Olympics.
Work on the stadium is a 24-hour operation as all the elements start to take shape. The Fonte Nova, to which Esport Club Bahia will finally return after the tournament, is a conditionally approved venue for the FIFA Confederations Cup in 2013 and is well on course to welcome international teams by then. Ney Campello represents the Bahia State Organising Committee.
We are strictly following the calendar given by the event organisers FIFA and have been from the start. We were the first contract to be signed in Brazil back in January 2010 and we promised to be ready by December 2012, so this year, and we'll do it.
And the stadium is already proving a massive benefit to the community. Through a partnership with a local charity, a number of formerly homeless people have now been given an opportunity to work. The construction has provided them with skills and qualifications which they will benefit from long after 2014.
I'm so glad to have been given all these opportunities, for being able to work on this great site, the Arena Fonte Nova, which will host the World Cup. I'm also very happy because today I am representing the people living on the streets. That makes me very happy because my example has opened many doors to many homeless people.
With upgrades also being made to the airport, port and roads, the whole of Salvador looks set to benefit hugely from the 2014 FIFA World Cup. For a city used to staging one of the biggest carnivals in the country, it's gearing up nicely for the greatest single sporting event on the planet. Coming up next time, we stay on the East Coast as we head to Ceará and its capital, Fortaleza. We look at the state of football in the city. and we spend some time with one of Fortaleza's most famous sons. Until then, goodbye.